Hello everyone, Iron Cameraman here. It's honestly hard for me to find the right words and pull my thoughts together because this situation is so messed up that it's hard to believe it's even real. But if we simplify everything down to one single sentence, it would sound like this. After almost 3 years of the Skibidi Toilet series' successful run, a company with big resources and a professional team, Invisible Narratives, is killing an indie project made by one person in an old SFM program, driven only by greed and corporate thirst for money. But this situation isn't as simple as that short phrase makes it sound. If you dig deeper and look at all the evidence piece by piece, you'll realize it's even dumber and more surreal than it first appears. This company doesn't just suck out money and ignore the audience and the franchise they own. They're doing it in a disgusting way. Even when their goal was just to make profit, they completely failed. And the longer you watch this video, the clearer that'll become. Unlike other similar situations, this time the creator of the series, Mr. Boom, didn't just decide to take a break or retire and sell his creation. If that were the case, I wouldn't even be making this video. The thing with Skibidi is that the creator had already sold the rights to the project to the company way back in 2023. Both he and we, the viewers, expected this company to make new Skibidi-related projects. I mean, this is the same company that brought in Michael Bay himself to make a movie based on our favorite series. As fans, we really believed this would become the next big success among indie projects. Something that could reach the level of Transformers in terms of quality. It could have been proof to all beginner creators that a single passionate and talented person can take their project all the way to Hollywood. Based on Mr. Boom's old statements, it's pretty likely that Michael Bay was the main reason he agreed to sign that deal. Considering how much Mr. Boom loves Transformers and even made animations about them at the start of his career, it's not surprising that no one in his place would have turned down such an offer, especially being just a solo animator whose series suddenly blew up to hundreds of millions of views on YouTube Shorts. Also, keep in mind that the CEO of Invisible Narratives, Adam Goodman, previously worked at Paramount Pictures and DreamWorks. On paper, there really didn't seem to be any reason to worry. With such an experienced founder and such a strong portfolio, what could possibly go wrong? And while we were waiting for the promised new projects, they started mass-producing tons of merch and launching collaborations with various games, while also preparing those very new projects, like Emergence. Meanwhile, the main Skibidi series was still made entirely by Mr. Boom. He did the animation, the story, the writing, everything. For us viewers, all that merch activity was just background noise. We didn't really pay much attention to it. To be fair, most viewers were perfectly fine with the company just helping out with merch and collaborations. It seemed fine. Just keep making average quality merch in the background and earn your money. But no, the moment they decided to stick their noses into the series itself and into Boom's channel, they completely tore off their masks and exposed themselves for who they really are. Everything started when the third part of episode 79 and the full version were released, and they were of absolutely terrible quality. Right after that came the first episode of the new series, Emergence, and just a week later, a compilation of the first episodes, without any updates, no changes, not even fixing the video format, which was still in the shorts layout instead of full screen. What's even funnier is that at the end of this compilation, a narrator repeats the most obvious things we literally just saw. And then, in a separate short, that same narrator again explains that Skibidi Toilet actually has a story, while making mistakes in the canon. They couldn't even retell Alexei's plot correctly. Here's one example. The narrator claims that TV Man Titan is the leader of the Alliance, which is completely wrong. And as for the Emergence trailer, I think it speaks for itself without any commentary. In short, the last 6 videos released on Boom's channel were absolutely worthless, especially when compared to all the previous episodes. And, suspiciously enough, all of this lined up perfectly with the launch of the new toy collection, the announcement from Invisible Narratives that they'd start producing weekly content, and the news that Boom would now be a producer, focusing on special episodes while Invisible handled the main work to mass-produce low-effort trash content. By the way, regarding episode 79 part 3 and the full episode, those weren't made by Invisible, they were 100% made by Mr. Boom himself. But why were they so bad? Why were there fart sounds every 2 seconds? You'll understand that by the end of this video, because the episode came out raw, not only due to the insane deadlines forced by Invisible, but also because Boom used it to send a meta message to the viewers. The entire plot of that episode is actually a metaphor, using the characters to represent real-life events, but we'll get to that later. To keep your brain from overloading during this intro, just remember this one thing. Everything you're about to hear and see next came from Invisible Narratives and their so-called new team, who, in Boom's own ironic words, understand the DNA of Skibidi Toilet and know what they're doing. So let's start with the Emergence series, the product entirely made by the company, not by Boom himself. Sure, he's credited as a producer, but it'll soon become clear that he had absolutely nothing to do with it. And frankly, even though it's visible to the naked eye, I'll still explain why absolutely no one liked this episode. With every new minute of this video, the cons will get more and more absurd, so brace your nerves. I'll start with the smallest thing, color grading and post-production. In other words, they somehow made worse the very things that Boom had already finished properly in SFM. It's easy to see in this moment. In episode 71, where this scene was taken from, there's a light white haze, and the contrast isn't pushed to insane levels, which is why you can see small details on the Titans. And in the redone version, not only is the fog either missing or replaced with black smoke, but the reshade is set so that the Titans' main bodies merge into one flat blackness. Yes, someone might object and say heavy contrast is a matter of taste, but if that's the case, why couldn't they, for example, ask Strider to make a proper reshade? He gets exactly the result where the detail is excellent and the colors are rich. On top of all that, there's the super slow motion, which ruins the image even more. The problem is that making slow motion out of animation that wasn't designed for it is a bad idea, because the movement becomes choppy and unnatural, like the character is floating in jelly. The camera seems to move slowly, but the gestures are jerky, because there are no new poses between frames, just stretched old ones. As a result, it looks cheap, unnatural, and it completely kills the sense of weight in the movement. Next, the problem with transitions. Suppose, here the transition between the scene where the Skibidi toilets attack and the scene with the Cameraman 3.0 attacking is so slow and pathetic that, because of the level of flashes and gunfire in both scenes, when combined it turns into an incomprehensible mush of spotlights and light. I'm already keeping quiet about the green filter. And the funniest part is that after this long transition, literally half a second later, the scene changes to the next one where Executor appears, meaning we didn't even properly see the actual scene. Here's another transition that's just unbelievably awful, and now I'll explain why. Let's start with the fact that, ideally, this transition itself is unnecessary. It didn't need to be added at all, but we'll talk about that later in the story section. Okay, let's assume the cut really was needed. Then, because the previous scene ends with running, and the next one starts with the characters already standing, our brain loses the bridge between actions. You get the feeling of jumpy editing, as if a piece of action is missing. Even if everything is logically clear, emotionally the moment is cut off. The viewer is thrown out of the scene. You can notice that from my first reaction. And I'm not going to explain the basics of how to do cuts. If you need it, pause here. Here are a couple of options for how editors do it. This is literally the foundation, and every editor is obliged to know it. And honestly, I'm surprised no one in post noticed it. Although, considering all the next shortcomings, this is still just the tip of the iceberg. For example, please explain to me why one person in the old, buggy SFM managed to make proper character textures and lighting, but an entire creative team of professionals in the ultra-modern Unreal Engine did not. They are exactly the ones who should have helped move the series' quality to a new level, the very next level. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, here's an example. Look, say at the clothes of this TV man. Now, look at a TV man from the main series. Even to the naked eye, it's clear that in Emergence the model is soapy and flat with no texture. And it'd be one thing if the problem were only that. It gets even worse because of the lack of proper lighting. Now compare these shots with the ones Boom did alone in SFM. If someone thinks I'm nitpicking, Don't forget, quality is in the details. Individually, each of these problems may seem minor, but together the difference is just crazy. To demonstrate this clearly, I asked my friend, who knows SFM well, to make a poster and show exactly where the difference lies between a refined image, like Boom did, and the one shown in the Emergence series. I could spend hours explaining what's wrong with the scene build and locations, why they look so empty. But really, what is there to explain? You can just look at this weird location where TV Woman was. The location is made so badly that I still don't fully understand what this place even is. Apparently, it's some kind of TV men base. But if it's really a base, then why out of all TV men are only TV Woman and Polycephaly there? Okay, about exposition. That's a separate topic. We'll come back to it. For fairness, I'll say that, compared to the other parameters, scene build at least exists somewhere. For example, outside at the beginning, you can see they added a reasonable number of details like debris. But even here, there's a catch. The particles used for fire and explosions look like someone just inserted a PNG. The textures are so blurry it's hard to believe. Come on, this is Unreal Engine, not SFM, which is known for its bugs and crashes. There, just to make particles work properly, you have to add dozens of scripts so that the program doesn't crash. We won't go far. Let's open the very latest SFM episode and look at this scene. Look how juicy the fire looks. And now, look at what they did here. Not only do the Astro toilets shoot like they're blind, literally from 3 meters and can't hit, the whole action boils down to endless shooting at nothing. Because of that, we simply watch the character run through clumps of soapy light, the camera shakes, and nothing is clear. And again, we return to the problem of scene choreography and exposition. It's so bad that even while breaking down the fire issue, it's impossible not to mention it. But again, be patient. I left the plot and exposition for dessert, because that's where the total collapse is. Now let's talk about character animation and their speech. The most telling example of what's wrong is the scene where Hunter grabbed Lucky Cameraman. Lucky is just kicking his legs, and it gives the impression he isn't resisting at all. Okay, it would be one thing if at least, story-wise, it looked cool. But no, even Hunter's speech sounds as clunky and on the nose as possible. He literally spells out what's supposed to happen. Hunter says, "You're coming with me alive and you will die," addressing POV. But why even say that out loud? A script has to be written between the lines, not hammered in so bluntly. The fact that Lucky is captured by an enemy and POV is doomed could have easily been shown with a single piece of animation. It's the same as if, in the episode where Speakerman Titan was infected, the Skibidi scientist had spoken straight into a loudspeaker. Speakerman Titan is infected. Now he's on our side, the Skibidi toilets, and he will kill you. The problem with such lazy and boring exposition is that it feels like we're watching a cartoon for 2-year-old kids, where everything is chewed up for us. The viewer isn't given the opportunity to figure out anything on their own. And how should exposition be done correctly, you might ask? There are many ways. You can, like in episode 77, imply things between the lines if you really want to add words, and then remove POV using the infected. Or, as in the case of Speakerman Titan's infection, simply show the Titan starting to kill his own side, and then POV, viewers will understand what happened anyway. Viewers see and understand everything perfectly without hints, and if something remains unclear, even better, it provokes discussions, generates theories, and starts word of mouth. Many YouTube channels, including mine, exist because of that. The interest in a mysterious story. But when the story is dumped on you in words and you already know what will happen because the villain literally says it out loud, then what's even the point of viewers discussing this shallow junk? A work of art is, first and foremost, a language of actions, not words. In life, we rarely voice the obvious, especially in tense moments. We show it through actions. And again, every drawback comes down to the problem of bad exposition and a complete disconnect from the audience. They have no idea what we want. But it's still too early to dig into that. Moving on. In this block, I've gathered an openly couldn't-care-less attitude toward details. For example, in this scene where the Astro toilet saw Boom's notice addressed to Lucky, some of them aren't even looking at the screen. Just look at this mess. This isn't a joke. Seriously, the person who animated this scene didn't even align those poor Astro toilets. Some of them are literally looking at the wall. I'm already silent about the fact that a whole hyper-large astro empire didn't think up a technology like a sensor that would automatically locate televisions with a broadcast, so they wouldn't have to use combat soldiers, one per screen. In this series, the astro toilets are shown as complete idiots. You simply can't believe that such a thing could be done by a super powerful cosmic empire. Okay, if these weren't direct combat units, but say some interesting characters with tentacles with eyes at the ends so they could watch several screens at once, or some other designs. I mean, they could have invented new characters whose purpose is to be observers, and it would look a bit more interesting. But the problem isn't even that. That's more of a mini nitpick. The problem is a bit broader. It turns out these combat units, manually, for hours, just stood there waiting for something to appear, because we know transmissions had been turned off before by the Alliance, so their locations wouldn't be exposed. And what's even funnier, the secret agent sent a message to Lucky to all the tablets and TVs in the world, but for some reason, along with it, he turned on Lucky's own broadcast and noticed that only his broadcast turned on. As a result, the Astro Trooper who was standing by the TV showing Lucky Cameraman's stream saw that Lucky was looking into his very screen and that he himself was there with his back turned, which made him realize Lucky was standing right behind him, and he turned around. It's just a disgrace. How could they mess up logic so badly and make a scene like that? What are the chances that among tens of thousands of screens, Lucky's transmission would turn on exactly on this one, at the exact moment he looked through the gap, and at the same moment when the secret agent turned it on? Do you understand this is nonsense stacked on nonsense? I'm already keeping quiet about the fact that the secret agent had never before had any trouble talking to Lucky directly. Why leak all this information to the entire Alliance? He's the secret agent, for crying out loud. The word secret is in his name. This is the most ridiculous thing they could have shown, and it's done only to somehow move the plot forward. Well, if it had to be this way, at least they could have given a story reason why he had to tell everyone. Whoever wrote this completely ignored logic. There are many such moments, done just to be there, without much sense. Because of this, it feels like the person who wrote the script and the one who did the storyboards didn't communicate with each other. The most harmless example is the scene at the TV men base. TV woman, speaker man, the cameraman scientist, and polycephaly are there. Weird company, isn't it? Why exactly them, and why are they together? And I'll tell you why. This is only my assumption, but most likely simply because they're different species. I mean, showing all the species in one frame was apparently the end goal, not a necessity. Or here's another detail. At the moment when POV pulls out the photo with the Alpha Hills staff, not only is the animation jerky, he also for some reason flips the photo over a second time to look at the back. Even though he already saw it when he picked the photo up off the floor, what's the point of flipping it? Although, in principle, the fact that everything is unfinished isn't even surprising anymore. I already mentioned the animation quality above, but I'll add something else while I remember. Let's comment on this moment too. As you can see, here the same animation just repeats again and again. That is, apparently they finished this scene and then decided to add this dumb scene that was supposed to be the funny part of the episode. Because of that, they didn't have any additional frames, and they just looped the existing animation at the moment when the camera zoomed out from the TV without even trying to fix or refine it. I simply have no words to describe how little they care about quality. Moving on, this still isn't everything. The moment of Hunter's appearance wasn't even animated, just a black screen for a few seconds, and then he's already in the frame. Come on. If you were too lazy to make a full scene, at least do it like in SFM with static from debris impact or something. That would look atmospheric. Why did you have to make such a lazy transition? And in general, we've seen many times how strong the secret agent is. Couldn't he make Lucky invisible at the moment of the attack? Especially since this isn't some ordinary agent but his main assistant, and with a green spark at that. And the ending with TV woman's face perfectly reflects my reaction to everything I saw. The light falls so that she looks like a black blot with a TV. And here we smoothly approach the main problem of this whole masterpiece. Even if you ignore all the above shortcomings, it's still impossible to understand what's going on. As I already said, I literally had trouble figuring out where exactly the characters are and what the location is. I think you already guess what the root of this entire catastrophe is, in the exposition and in the way the story is told. Even if it's not really so, but even imagining that on paper the story's skeleton was at least watchable and logically combined with the main narrative, the way they showed it, it's just awful. Count it on your fingers. They showed the very first TV man death. They showed the secret weapon that had been hinted at for so long in previous episodes of the main storyline. They showed Alpha Hills captured by the Astro toilets. They showed how the secret agent talked to Lucky Cameraman, and how Lucky Cameraman suddenly got a green spark and became acidic. In addition, they revealed what Lucky needs to do to launch that very secret weapon. And as soon as he learned it, the villains had already managed to steal it. And all this in 5 minutes of runtime. Why 5 minutes, you ask? Because for the first 2 minutes, they just showed old footage from the series, with a girl in the background giving a lead-in to the secret agent's message. Then, for 20 seconds, we watched the intro and logos. And at the end, for a whole minute under default epic music from any action trailer, they once again reminded us that this is a new series, and wrapped it all up with toy ads. And you don't need to be a professional in storytelling to understand it's impossible to cram so many events into 5 minutes and make it watchable, even if you showed everything perfectly. Is it really possible that among this entire new team there wasn't a single person who would say, "Stop, this is crap, let's do it properly"? It's so obvious that even I, an ordinary person, immediately understood what the problems were. And the great Adam Goodman, who has worked in this industry for many years in high positions, approved this crap for publication. And was there really not a single person at any stage of this garbage's production from Invisible who honestly said that they were going in the wrong direction? After all, the problem isn't in the new engine and not in the fact that viewers got used to SFM, so they hate it. I perfectly understand that SFM isn't Hollywood-grade software, and sooner or later it probably made sense to start making the series on more modern engines and technologies. But the problem here is much deeper. It's a problem of approach. When you see this attitude toward beloved characters, your heart genuinely bleeds. If Invis were in anyone else's place, they would have deleted this episode long ago after the feedback it received, or at least made a public statement, admitted their mistakes, and honestly talked to the viewers about the obvious problems. But how Invisible Narratives reacted to all this is a separate topic, so let's move on. Up to this point, we've been judging what's happening in Emergence by its animation, image quality, and exposition. Now it's time to break down the plot on its own. Let's imagine for a moment the animation is perfect and talk only about what's wrong with the story itself. Let's quickly run through the skeleton of the plot. Some girl off-screen says that, according to her mom, the world wasn't always like this, meaning a meat grinder between the Alliance and the Skibidis. And it turns out she never saw peacetime. That means years have passed since the invasion began, enough for her to be born and grow up after the war started. But that completely contradicts Skibidi Toilet, where we saw human survivors of the same generation. Then she says, "If I hear the song, I cover my ears." And here's my question to this girl's mom. Who do you think headphones were invented for? How did humanity even lose to practically unarmed, not that numerous Skibidis in the very beginning, when we had an entire army of soldiers and tanks? If some random girl knows you just have to cover your ears with your hands? In episode 74, we were shown that Skibidi music, even if it's played through any player like a gramophone, still affects the human brain. That means she wouldn't even have time to blink before turning into a Skibidi if the music was nearby. She would have to wear headphones all the time. So her mom's advice, if anything happens, just cover your ears, wouldn't make any sense at all in this universe. It's the same as if in Bird Box, where the plot says you can't look at the mysterious creatures, the characters walked around like this instead, covering their eyes with their hands. Moving on. Why did the secret agent even send a signal across the entire Earth? Like I already said, he could have joined the broadcast himself, but instead he let all the Astro know they needed to destroy Lucky. And for some reason he placed the signal source in Alpha Hills, and of course the Astro flocked there. What were the TV men doing at the time? Why didn't they teleport there immediately? Here's another question. Who is the POV talking to? Judging by the speaker man's sounds, is that a speaker man with a portable camera? Then why do the subtitles just say POV? That means it's a cameraman, not a speakerman, because the next POV was labeled Speakerman POV. So the cameraman learned to speak, and in the same language as the speakermen? Then why do the other agents not even have translation devices on their heads like we saw in episode 79? And how do they understand him without one? Guys, do you see how bad the exposition and plotting are here, to the point where, as a breakdown guy, even I have trouble figuring out whose perspective we're seeing at the start? In Boom's series, when we're looking through a portable camera, that is, from other races' POV, we, the viewers, were shown from the very first episode how the engineer cameraman hooks up the camera and hands it to the right character. In episode 79, even at the end, when we already knew the POV was a speakerman, they showed it again, through the detective picking up the camera. Scenes like that keep viewers from getting confused about obvious things. These little details are done not only for plot purposes, but specifically so the viewer knows who's who. And also, why does a TV man suggest they run across an open field instead of just teleporting safely? And where did Lucky Cameraman even get the master key if in episode 70, Plunger Man took it first, and then that key most likely fell somewhere under the floor when the scientist opened it? Because if Lucky had the master key on him this whole time, then why didn't the detective start investigating that technology? Plus, according to the plot, Lucky's arrest was part of the secret agent's plan. Boom himself confirmed this in a post answering subscriber questions, and keeping a potential piece of evidence in your pocket is a pretty bad idea for Lucky. And even if we assume off-screen the secret agent somehow met Lucky and gave the master key back again, then why the hell didn't he talk to him about the secret gun at that same moment, so he wouldn't have to blow his whole operation to the entire world? By the way, why are the agents watching their own broadcast if the Astro can trace them through the live feed? And same for the Astro Troopers. Why are they staring at monitors for hours? In episode 78, the characters were in a building, and the Astro toilets still figured out where they were. That means, thanks to the captured TV man Titan, they have access not only to the image itself, but also to the location of broadcasts. So they don't have to watch the screen at all. Just look at the tracker of live feed locations. Judging by the number of TVs, including a huge one, this is a TV men base, but it looks completely different. They didn't even try to make the location resemble the old one. And who is that giant standing behind them? Polycephaly? So he wasn't injured in episode 79, or he healed that fast. When does this series even take place? TV man Titan has already been infected. The girl says that, which means this happens after episode 77. But at the same time, there are shots from episode 79. Are those even canon? Or were they just thrown in to save time so they wouldn't have to animate something new? And I still have questions for whoever wrote this plot. Why is Lucky's left arm glowing green? Where did dozens, if not hundreds of televisions come from in Alpha Hills? And why did the operator's broadcast show up on them? So the secret agent deliberately turned it on to get everyone killed, or what? Or here's another one. How does the detective even manage to kill a specialist with a weak little handgun? Let me remind you that in episode 76, we were clearly shown the power of even a single regular Astro Trooper. POV spent almost a minute trying to kill him, and if not for the large cameraman's help, he would have died. And here in Emergence, they're made of clay, apparently, because the detective and Lucky literally, while handcuffed, managed to cut his head off. I'm not even getting into the fact that not only did they make them weak, but the sizes of these troopers don't match canon at all. They got way bigger. We're not even talking about canon anymore if the characters' sizes don't even remotely match Boom's version. And then it goes completely off the rails. Everything starts glowing green, some kind of portal opens in the ceiling, and everyone gets sucked in like a vacuum cleaner. First of all, where did they teleport? And why did they need the broadcast for that? Couldn't the secret agent just teleport Lucky there himself? Or at least give the coordinates to the TV man? Where are they even now? Why is there the same photo of the secret agent as in episode 70? And the operator hands it to the detective, even though he's already seen it. It was literally lying on his desk in front of Lucky in the bonus scene of season 25. Plunger Man first saw that photo in episode 70, and back then he didn't have a recording error, which is how the detective kept that lead. We saw at the end of episode 70 that he was watching Plunger Man's hospital broadcast. Why show this again? Couldn't they at least make a different photo of that team of scientists with something actually new? In Boom's story, everything is interconnected and logical, but here everything is slapped together, just for a checkbox, without understanding the essence. And how could the master key physically merge with Lucky? It's just a remote with a hack button. I could understand if the secret agent implanted a similar device into Lucky after the repairs in episode 47, but no, the remote literally fused into Lucky by magic. Even though the twins used green energy perfectly fine without any remotes, why did Lucky become the key to using the weapon at all? Because he has green energy? But the master key was given by the secret agent himself. So what's unique about him then? A bunch of characters use green energy, but for some reason Lucky, without the slightest explanation, suddenly became unique. What did all the people in that facility we teleported to even die from? Can anyone who wrote this explain anything with this episode? This is off-the-charts incompetence on every level. Any fan could have written this scene better. This is a crucial moment. We are literally in the place where the secret agent worked, and they still didn't explain why the secret agent can't activate the OP gun himself. Why are there only 3 energies in it? Did they forget the purple one or what? By the way, how did the hunter even find them? So what, poor Lucky Cameraman still has his broadcast turned on? What nonsense. Are we really saying the secret agent is so dumb here that one time wasn't enough for him to finally figure out to turn it off so the Astro Watchers wouldn't know his new location? And where did the hunter even come from? Did he punch through the ceiling face first in a hyper jump? But the ceiling is intact. Nothing is clear. We literally don't understand where he came from. The same problem as in the beginning, when one simple cut throws us into the middle of the Alpha Hills journey. I tried to find at least some positive in this new series, but whatever I touch, it's all terrible. Okay, let's talk about the detective's story arc, which, because of this episode, didn't just lose its potential, it got flushed straight down the toilet. Starting with episode 70, we watched bit by bit as the detective gathered evidence against the secret agent, getting closer to the truth each time. We, the audience, were waiting for the climax of his story, because the secret agent always spoke between the lines, and that made the detective feel like a potential conduit who would help us at least crack the mystery a little through the result of his investigation. Add to that the fact that the secret agent killed Plunger Man, resurrected Lucky Cameraman, and even Lucky's arrest by the detective was part of his plan. Put together, it hyped our interest even more, making us guess what's really going on. We wanted to understand why a seemingly good guy is so aggressively leading the detective down a false trail, for example by showing a fake recording through Lucky. Why? And what is he hiding? And what did we end up seeing in Emergence? The detective literally came face to face with the secret agent, stood right next to him, and did nothing. He didn't say anything, didn't react in any way, just spent the whole episode playing a cop tied to Lucky. Why did the Emergence writers throw away such an insanely interesting plotline in such a dumb way? Even if we imagine that episode 2 will be made by Glitch, Pixar, and DreamWorks all together, everything shown in episode 1 can't be logically tied to the past or to a proper continuation. The only right decision is to delete this series completely so that its very existence doesn't ruin Alexi's original show. I've already talked about Lucky and the secret agent's arc, but I'll add this. Here the secret agent looks more like Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb than a mysterious character inspired by G-Man from Half-Life. And if all that wasn't enough to break your brain, now we get to the worst story decision. And as you've guessed, it's about the death of a TV man. First, pay attention. Before dying, he says, "Time for me to leave." So you're telling me that for the most important mission they sent key characters, but instead of a normal TV man, they brought an egotist who only thinks about himself? In episode 76, that kind of TV man literally got smacked by a wardrobe and all the agents flipped him off, and now he gets admitted to the most serious mission? That's yet another clue, proving that the Emergence authors didn't even watch Boom's original series. Let me say it again so you feel the full scale of how dumb this decision is. This is the most important mission, and the entire Alliance knew what it meant. Even a random girl at the start says the operation's success could mean the end of the war and stop all deaths. And for a mission at that level, they send a TV man who not only died from a single shot like he's made of marshmallow, but in the decisive moment thought only about himself. He didn't care about anyone else. For comparison, remember the mission to kill the Skibidi scientist. Brave soldiers gathered, and every character showed their best. Large Speakerman sacrificed himself holding the doors so the others could make it into the lab. Large Cameraman, even before dying, thought of others and gave his lens to Plungerman so he'd be protected from radiation. Plungerman himself, despite the risk he'd die if the door didn't close in time, asked them not to close the doors until the twins got in. I can list details like that from Boom's series endlessly. That's exactly why we love these characters, not because they have a speaker for a head or a plunger in their hands. That's how proper plotting and empathy for heroes work in series. In Emergence, there's nothing even close. Characters get everything easily while acting like total idiots. Both the agents and the enemies are equally brainless. And I haven't even noted that in the entire original Skibidi Toilet series, not a single TV man ever died. That was a fandom-wide intrigue. When the first death would happen and under what circumstances, and they blew that moment too. I absolutely refuse to accept this episode as canon. Boom has outstanding visual storytelling. Each race has its own energy color and unique character. The Speakermen often play black comedy relief, creating comedic beats to break the tension. And here they gave that role to a cameraman for some reason, which only proves the writers didn't even figure out how the races differ from one another. Here, the heroes are totally cardboard. A TV man differs from a cameraman only in appearance. Swap their heads and you won't feel any difference, like these characters were slapped together just for numbers. Back in the exposition section, I promised to explain why frequent cuts are bad, not only because they look ugly, but also from a storytelling point of view. First, Boom in his series always tries to avoid cuts, and if he uses them, he does it very carefully. Episode 77 is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Thanks to the one-take effect, you feel presence, and all the scenes are tied together into a single line. But that's only half the problem. Because of this, so much potential goodness vanished. Imagine how cool it would have been to see Alpha Hills properly, a detailed base with interesting bits and different rooms we saw in episodes 68, 69, and 70, but changed now that the Astro lived there. Instead, we got cheap-looking locations, and Alpha Hills is shown like it's an ordinary, story-irrelevant place. They only showed the secret agent's room with 2 details, this photo we've already seen, and a cipher on the board saying Jeffrey knows something we already knew from Polycephaly's words in episode 78. So literally everything new we learned from this episode came only from dialogue, written bluntly and straight to your face. Meanwhile, Boom put in the effort and always wrote between the lines in his series, especially when it came to the secret agent. If they were too lazy to do long walkthroughs of the lab, they could have at least done it like in episode 79, a run and gun, come on, anything. So the viewer understands this is a huge location, not my grandpa's basement. And here are more mini details. Almost always, all 3 races are on screen together. It looks like the plot was written by instruction and by a newbie. And this whole search for the spark theme, it's pure pop cliché, taken straight from any treasure hunting or adventure movie, just to give the character some simple, primitive motivation and goal. And overall, if you pay attention, there are a lot of clichés. Let me list only the ones I noticed. The countdown in the background to something, to artificially create the illusion of an ending. A character crawls into the vents to hide. The protagonist explains his entire plan. The main hero is the chosen one who has to save everyone. The screen that turns on is exactly the Astro Lucky was standing behind, and so on. A cliché itself isn't a problem, but it becomes a problem when the whole plot is nothing but clichés. That's where the endless giant plot holes come from. Everything feels pulled out of thin air just to make the most default, boring, billion times chewed up Hollywood story. I've pointed out what catastrophic mistakes were made in the story and animation to show that all this hate from the fandom isn't just about wanting Boom to return to working on Skibidi. It's also because these corporate guys couldn't even make a proper parody of the series they've owned the rights to for more than 2 years. Think about it. During all that time, they were releasing toys, doing collaborations, and you'd think they'd have gotten to know the universe they were planning to adapt on their own. But instead, while Boom was creating the original series all by himself, they managed to produce nothing but this shameful piece of garbage. What surprised me most in this whole story was that Invisible Narrative's response to our dissatisfaction, which I mentioned earlier, was something like this. I don't remember it word for word since it was said during a call, but the idea was basically, you can't judge after just one episode. Wait for more episodes, your feedback has been heard, it'll get better. In short, as usual, typical surface-level corporate bullshit. Instead of actually listening to the viewers, deleting this embarrassment, and starting over, they justify it and aren't planning to take any real action. If they really listened to our feedback, anyone in their position would have already done something. When I first heard that argument, my mind was in complete chaos, realizing how there's an intergalactic layer of vacuum between the company and the viewers when it comes to understanding the situation and interpreting the obvious. Because the problem isn't just one episode, it's deep and fundamental. They have absolutely no idea what they're doing. The Skibidi toilet fandom is full of talented people they could have hired if they actually wanted to. But let's assume they didn't want an SFM series, since most of the fandom are SFM creators, and they supposedly wanted to make something different, not in SFM. That logic is extremely strange, but fine. Let's imagine there was no other choice, and that the people who animated it were literally the only ones on the planet who had Unreal installed. Then why are the story, the exposition, the basic color grading, and even the thumbnail all complete dog shit? Was there really not a single person in the entire fandom who could have taken care of all this if they couldn't? The plots of many fan-made what-if videos, created by fans with zero budget and no film production experience, have far more logic and look way more convincing than what was shown in Emergence, made by Adam Goodman's company, the same man who worked on Transformers. They not only failed to find normal animators, they completely messed up on every other level as well. Also, according to EBO's sources, the budget for Emergence was around $100,000, though it's unclear if that was for one episode or for several at once. For comparison, episode 47 by Dom Studio cost only $10,000, 10 times less, with far higher quality and a much longer runtime. The sources that helped EBO with the FZCO investigation have proven their reliability, so let's assume that number is close to reality, especially considering that part of the budget most likely went into switching to another program. But even if that's true, the question remains, why hire a big studio when the Skibidi animation community could have done it better and cheaper? If that number is real, then even from a business perspective, the decision is an absolute failure. What I mean is that handing over the production of a new Skibidi toilet series to random people who only knew the characters from Wikipedia articles could only be done by a caricature-level shallow businessman. It's like if James Cameron came up to me and offered me to write the next Avatar movie. No matter how smart, talented, handsome, or kind I might be, I'd make that Avatar so bad that the original fans would hate me and tear me apart. In other words, invisible narratives, who are dumping all this onto the channel and calling it a new era, know about Skibidi Toilet about as much as I know about some random franchise I watched once while eating popcorn. The stupidity of this decision is made even worse by the fact that the fandom is full of talented people. And if halfway through, at no stage of production, they couldn't realize that what they were making was garbage, that means they don't even understand what exactly is bad in Emergence. And all the mistakes I mentioned simply passed right before their eyes.
It's finally here, Skibidi Toilet 79 Part 3.
I don't even know what's gonna happen, dude. I want to look at the comments. Bro. I don't want no spoilers, bro. I haven't seen it. Let's watch it.
Jeffrey. Oh, hold on, chat. What? I'm so confused by this episode, chat. It's different.
But it was an interesting episode. I think the animation definitely wasn't as good as I'm used to.
Why can't I see what's happening, bruh?
The new Skibidi Toilet toys are here. Take it.
That just ruined the episode. I can't even lie. That just ruined the whole episode for me. I cannot even lie, bro. I thought we were gonna see Titan Speaker Man sitting there looking all epic and shit. Okay, I like the first part of the episode, but the last part, I did not like. But anyway, chat, as always though, I will say W Skibidi Toilet.
Mr. Boom has not yet commented on the situation anywhere, which made some viewers think he simply left, gave up, or doesn't go online and doesn't notice what's happening. However, as my friends who understand legal matters explained, he's most likely bound by a contract that includes an NDA clause, which forbids him from speaking out against the company. Otherwise, it could lead to legal consequences, especially now since there's an ongoing lawsuit against FZCO involving both him and Invisible. Technically speaking, any word he says could theoretically be used against him, so the version that his hands are legally tied seems the most plausible. The other explanations, that he's unaware of what's happening or just hasn't noticed, sound completely absurd, since in the past, he always communicated actively with the audience. So, considering all these factors, it's no surprise that he isn't speaking directly right now. However, as it turns out, he decided to make a smart move and reach us in another way. All my suspicions that something was off with episode 79 began after the release of its third part. And as you remember, in that older video I talked about the oddities in the story and animation, but it turned out that all these strange things happened because Boom hid a message for viewers inside the episode. And you'll soon see that for yourself. Several clues indicate that episode 79 isn't ordinary. For example, throughout almost the entire time surrounding its release, Boom pretended, and still pretends, to be an AI robot. Whenever someone asks him about the quality of the episodes, he responds in a very positive and generic way, exactly how Invisible Narrative speaks: corporate, sterile, and soulless. In one of the replies, he even attached a voice message where he used AI to mock that style of speech, saying that he isn't a robot.
I wish to officially confirm that I am not and have never been a clunker.
When those replies first appeared, many thought it was just another joke from Boom, but after Invisible Narratives started publishing their own videos on his YouTube channel, the events in episode 79 suddenly made perfect sense, and now it's time to rewatch it from a different angle. Let's start our detective investigation with some context, so we can connect what happens in episode 79 to real-life events metaphorically. To remind you how much of a perfectionist Boom is in terms of quality and teamwork, let me tell you about a situation from episode 78. He decided to let animators Strider and Deer from Ohio, some of the top SFM animators, try to make that episode, but in the end, episode 78 was made by Boom himself. The description states that those animators were assistants, while Strider made a big post where he explained the situation in more detail. In short, it turns out that even though the animation turned out good, they had to pass on it. But in terms of character design, he's still working with Boom. Strider also adds that Boom wants to make everything as high quality and personal as possible, and you can't blame him for that. He's doing it for the fans. Judging by the description of episode 79, the same can be said about Deer from Ohio. Even though he isn't animating for Boom, he continues to work with him and made the design of Watchmen of Doom and the location. In other words, it's important to Boom to control the series at every stage, so it remains author-driven and as good as we're used to. However, along the way, he still hasn't found the right method of working with animators to get exactly the result he wants to see in a given scene, so he does the animation himself. We should also remember that before episode 78, he wrote to Ibio about the amount of light and that a new technology was being used for the new episodes. Thanks to this so-called new technology, episode 78 became the peak of image quality and richness for the entire series. Besides that, if anyone forgot, Boom has repeatedly spoken about the poor, unclear story from Dom's studio, and in episode 74, there was even a reference to their races where POV throws clocks, pencils, and drills off the table. And in his words, letting Dom's studio make a Skibidi series was a huge mistake. That is, he even cares about the story in another universe that could potentially distort his series' plot by showing the Astro toilets incorrectly, and so on. And these are just some examples I brought up to remind you. Boom has always put the authorial vision, the thing that makes Skibidi Toilet, first, and he kept improving it throughout the series' entire run. That has always been his priority, despite the long waits and viewers begging him to speed up. That's why I'm 100% sure that if Boom had creative control, he would have refused to let Emergence be published in such a disgusting state on his own channel. By the way, legally speaking, his channel, the one he developed all this time alone, most likely doesn't even belong to him anymore, so he doesn't have any leverage. Before Emergence was released, Boom posted a message saying that now the episodes would be made by an entire creative team of people who understand the DNA of Skibidi toilets. That was an obvious troll toward Invisible Narratives, because not only do they not understand the DNA of the series, they don't even grasp the most basic things about the plot. And 5 days after the release of episode 79 Part 3, a mysterious video appeared on the channel of Mr. Boom's friend, showing all 3 species characters without heads, set to sad music. That's clearly a reference to the situation where he has been completely stripped of control over his own series. The steering wheel is now fully in Invisible Narratives' hands, and all he has left are headless versions, since the rights belong to them, not him. And 2 days after the release of the full episode 79, the same channel posted a second short, but this time, the Skibidi toilet characters are without toilets and also set to sad music. Whether Boom made that video himself or his friend did doesn't really matter. The main point is that Door Closer wouldn't have published such a video without Boom's knowledge, knowing that his channel has always been seen in our fandom as connected to Boom. So that's another way of reaching out to the viewers. The title of those videos literally says, "Incomplete." That refers to the fact that both episode 79 Part 3 and the full version actually weren't ready for release. Apparently, Invisible didn't even let Boom properly finish the episodes, which is likely why he intentionally added those fart sounds every 2 seconds, maybe to show the viewers how little Invisible cares about quality, because if they actually cared, they would have noticed that sound before publishing and fixed it. By the way, the fact that they set a stupid and unrealistic deadline to crank out episodes weekly isn't just my guess. That's 100% confirmed. The company itself announced it on October 7th. Moreover, it's very likely that the recent videos weren't even uploaded by Boom himself, but by the company. Notice that in the descriptions of both episode 79 Part 3 and the full version, there's a small mistake that Boom had never made before. On YouTube, to tag another YouTuber and make their name clickable, you have to manually enter it each time. All previous videos on Boom's channel had correct descriptions, but starting with episode 79 Part 3, the usernames stopped being clickable, which means whoever posted the video simply did Control-C and Control-V from the previous description, not even knowing that they had to type them manually. That's more proof that Alexei isn't even handling the uploads anymore. The company is doing it for him. And since the people working there have no clue how YouTube actually functions, even something as simple as a description was done wrong, completely exposing them. Another interesting detail. Previously, Alexei almost never had ads at the end of his videos, and he didn't even include links to his own merch store in the descriptions. But now, suddenly, all recent videos are promoting the new fall toy collection, with the link literally everywhere, even under re-uploads of old episodes. Considering how awful the transitions are in the full version of episode 79, I wouldn't be surprised if they were the ones who did the final editing too, where all they had to do was just stitch the scenes together. And now we've reached the most interesting part. It turns out Alexei has been communicating with us all this time, and the answer was right in front of our eyes. He was literally shouting about what's happening and how they're trying to erase him. As you've probably guessed, he was speaking to us through his own series and its story. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. Long before episode 79 was released, Boom, answering my question about what the UFO and G-Man talked about in episode 60, wrote that episode 79 would unlock a lot of new information and reveal many things. But when we watched episode 79 and saw nothing connected to that UFO G-Man conversation, it became clear that he meant something completely different. That hidden inside the episode itself was another message revealing something bigger. Here's another clue. When he replied to a fan's question about what episode 79 would be about, he said it would reveal some possibilities for the viewers. Yes, you heard that right. Back around episode 77, when TV man Titan was infected by the parasite core, he directly said that episode 79 would include interactivity with the viewers. That means we, as viewers, were supposed to make a choice. And before the release of Part 3, Alexei wrote that we needed to watch the episode to the end to understand him, since it was a build-up to something else. Now let me remind you of episode 79's plot. We're attacked by TV man Titan, who is under the villain's control and can't control himself while he's asking us to forgive him. The villain, represented by Duchess, says that only power decides things and that they'll seize everything by force. We also failed to negotiate a peaceful settlement. This is voiced by the Skibidi hybrid with a briefcase, claiming that the only way out is an attack. In the end, one of the soldiers takes the blame upon himself and dies, and he's replaced by a new version. No one notices the swap, because for many nothing has changed. Only POV Speakerman waves his hands and tries to explain that he noticed something strange. The detective then takes this evidence to investigate the case. And here's why this plot looks so much like what's happening in real life. I have a theory that everything Boom showed in episode 79 is a performance. Almost all of the characters' lines, their types, and the plot itself fit the current situation perfectly. That's why the episode looked so strange when we watched it without context, before all the latest news. That's why it seemed confusing to many, which is confirmed by numerous reactions, breakdowns, and viewer comments. Now let's speculate on this topic. Who is who in episode 79, really? I think that Watchman of Doom in this story represents Boom's channel, which was taken over by Invisible Narratives, the very one who's always positive but templated, answering only with set phrases. And what captured it is the core parasite. That's the very traitor that needs to be eliminated for TV Man Titan to return to the Alliance. Jeffrey in this play, as I see it, is the main observer. After all, this dimension belongs to him, and he's the one who made Skibidi so popular. That's why I think Jeffrey is the power of the united fandom. It's all the viewers of Skibidi Toilet. And that's why he can easily cancel anything at all. He's the decider here. That's why he is so powerful here, and his hand is even bigger than Doom himself. By the way, YouTuber Hot Sauce Beats conveyed the fandom's reaction to this scene perfectly, back when we still didn't understand what it really meant.
Who's Jeffrey? Is Jeffrey a new TV Titan of some sort? I mean, am I misseeing that? Did he just smack the Watchman of Doom? Titan TV Man?
Doom, by the way, says directly that they now own this area, and Polycephaly TV Man, who most likely represents Alexei himself, couldn't defeat it alone. He's too weak to fight an entire Titan. The Titan represents his captured massive channel, the one he built with his own hands through years of work. He created a whole empire, and that empire turned against him because of the parasite, a symbol of the company. Too many coincidences with real life, right, guys? Jeffrey literally says that this is his universe. He basically predicted the fandom's reaction, that we wouldn't just sit idly by and watch them destroy his channel. That's exactly what Boom was talking about. This is direct confirmation of the viewer interactivity he mentioned, showing that we are also part of the story. As it turns out, the Skibidi Toilet storyline has now broken the fourth wall and is happening in real life. Until then, Jeffrey was just a secret character who appeared back in episode 78, and suddenly, he became an all-powerful god. That doesn't fit the usual Skibidi Toilet logic, and that's why I'm 100% sure that Jeffrey, as he appeared in that scene, isn't a real character, but a metaphor, a reference to us, the viewers. The original camera woman, who blamed herself and died, symbolizes the original Skibidi Toilet era, and the new fake camera woman represents the new invisible era, the one we've been seeing for the last couple of weeks. TV scientist and the detective personify the viewers who don't understand what POV Speakerman is talking about. No one believes him because he can't prove his words. The viewers see in front of them that camera woman seems to be standing there, and it looks like everything is fine. This creates the perfect alibi, because if you look only at what Invisible says, it really does seem like there's nothing suspicious going on. But how do you prove to the Alliance that this is a fake, that it's not the same thing as before? That's where Cameraman Detective appears, who tries to figure it out, having all the facts. Meanwhile, in this performance, the original camera woman admits that everything happened because of her. She disappeared not because of an external enemy like the Astro Toilets, but because of her own reckless actions that led to a traitor inside the Alliance, the Parasite Corps, referring to how Alexei himself signed that deal with Invisible back in 2023. But if, like me, you don't have enough confidence to believe in such an absurd situation that's taking shape, then here are even more clues. On Boom's Discord server a long time ago, a new text channel was created called TV Franchise, where he was genuinely happy that Skibidi would soon become a whole franchise, essentially confirming even then that new projects were coming, like this new Emergence series, and the fandom was also very inspired by this news. However, after some time, he removed TV Franchise from Discord and even wrote a message like this, which says he's upset that he doesn't see any progress on the movie, at least he isn't getting new updates on it, and moreover, he isn't involved in the process or any details. The second message contains even more details. Let me quote it in full. There was also more recent idea to make sort of short project on their end, kind of collab, and this idea is in some sort of stage at least for a half a year now. It's like Noon is working, or at least Noon is transparent about it. I'm completely isolated from process. No concepts, no updates. Something imprecise and blurry was described on the phone about it. I seen bits of script, and that's it. I feel like a fool. My hope is dying with immense speed now. Let me remind you that after this, Michael Bay posted a video where he says the process is ongoing and we'll see something soon, and Boom wrote that he talked to Bay and now he's back to having an understanding, as he even made a cool little animation where he celebrates that news. It gives the impression that he gets details about the movie very rarely. Of course, in those messages, Boom was talking mainly about the movie, but seeing what problems Emergence has in animation and story, then in my opinion, it's possible the same problem, where he was barely involved in the production process, happened here too. It's not out of the question that the small project mentioned is Emergence, but we don't know for sure. If the result and quality of the new series were, let's say, on the level of Murder Drones or close to it, and if the storytelling were properly linked to the main series and better than Boom's series, that'd be a different conversation. I'm sure that in that case, Boom must regret signing such a terrible contract. And when we see a new official series that feels more like a bad fan project instead of the quality viewers expected, that's exactly what the fandom dislikes. And lately, Boom has been replying more often that he doesn't know what will happen next when asked about future storylines. That indirectly confirms once again that they don't listen to him and do whatever they want with the series. Even the future of the story is completely in their hands. Another very strong confirmation that Boom supports our Bring Boom Back movement was this message from Door Closer's channel during Zach Door's video premiere, where he wrote, "Absolute Cinema." When a sequel is made not by its creator and not by a hardcore fan who knows every detail of the project by heart, a company can show the original author's name in the intro for an hour straight. The audience will still see that he has absolutely nothing to do with it. Considering into whose clumsy hands Skibidi Toilet ended up, I'm sure they still don't realize that the entire episode 79 was a message to the viewers. Just think about it. Even knowing the context, that they ignore and erase Alexei from his own project during production, they still didn't understand that episode 79 has a hidden meaning. And with their own hands, they published it. They simply don't understand the author's trolling. They don't catch that he's openly mocking them in posts and in email replies, copying their speech patterns and communication style. They just can't put one and one together. And there's a direct reference to this inside episode 79 itself. There too, the enemies literally can't hit Polycephaly TV Man, who symbolizes the creator of Skibidi Toilet, and he says that they can't hit him at all. And when it turns out that tracking devices are installed everywhere, that's a metaphor for how in real life, he can't say anything openly, as if he's being listened to everywhere. In a post by Zach Door, a YouTuber who has a contract with Invisible Narratives and helped make the base in episode 79, it's stated that the contract includes a clause forbidding him from saying anything bad about the company. Considering that Boom's contract is almost certainly even stricter, it's no surprise he doesn't say anything directly and speaks only between the lines. The Skibidi Toilet project, throughout its entire history before Invisible took over, was a project from a fan for fans. But as soon as traditional modern Hollywood, in the worst sense of the word, stepped in, with its hyper-focus solely on numbers and money, it all turned into sterile, legally polished, refined crap that's impossible to watch without tears. Those YouTubers who still don't see the obvious and keep saying, "It'll get better in the next episodes," or even claim, This is good because now episodes will come out more often, are either blatantly lying, or they really don't care about the future of Skibidi Toilet, or they simply don't understand the situation and believe Invisible's words that Boom is producing something. By the way, I'll respond to another point the company brought up during our call. Again, I don't remember it word for word, but roughly their view of what they're doing sounded like this. Releasing episodes once every 3 to 4 months is unacceptable. Whether you like it or not, Skibidi Toilet became a commercial project after Boom sold the rights in 2023. Running a business requires fulfilling legal and financial obligations, so Boom needs to collaborate with the team for ST to keep existing. Basically, with these words, they twist the meaning and try to blame everything on Mr. Boom. No, ST didn't become a business. You decided to milk it for cash. What does Boom have to do with your greed? Your job is toys and collabs, and even with that, you handled it with mixed success. If we nitpick, even there things were far from perfect. But we ignored it because some of the toys were actually good. And back then, we didn't have the full context we have now. You have tons of fan-made channels under your wing, so why are you so obsessed with Boom? Why are you demanding speed from him at the cost of quality instead of supporting the fandom and its creator? You've got Michael Bay himself working with you, the creator of Transformers with breakthrough SGI graphics, and you launch this kind of crap on a channel with tens of millions of views. What kind of business is that? You literally cut costs on everything while only losing revenue, and now tons of creators are threatening to leave, taking away your merch promotion and profit share. You are literally parasitizing on Skibidi Toilet and killing it with every move you make. What team is Boom supposed to work with? The one you're talking about. With a team of harmful, efficient managers? The exact kind of company you are? You're not just useless, you're actively harmful. Bring Boom back before it's too late. Otherwise, your whole scheme will collapse in a couple of months because your content farm approach is killing Skibidi. Views are melting before our eyes. How are you planning to earn in 6 months? In a year, you'll just end up selling the project for pennies to whoever offers more, because you're not even trying to develop the franchise long term. You're trying to loot as much as possible right now without thinking ahead. And how hypocritical it is to blame Boom for short-sightedness, when his approach of focusing on quality instead of quantity was the only right one. It was exactly this approach and exactly this strategy to make everything as high quality as possible that raised Skibidi Toilet to such heights. And when I see you making a post celebrating that your live stream got 8 million views, I honestly feel like throwing up from the level of hypocrisy. Adam Goodman even reposts it, presenting those 8 million as their great achievement. Any live stream on Alexei's channel would have hit 8 million, even if you streamed a black screen, because it's Boom's channel. Viewers are used to everything coming from him being a masterpiece. For context, if someone doesn't know, the stream lasted a couple of days and showed a countdown to the premiere of the first Emergence episode, meaning, for their own series, they launched the very first stream on Boom's channel and cranked viewer expectations up even higher for the debut episode. The scale of the buildup was so huge that we, as viewers, genuinely expected a series on the level of Transformers in terms of quality. So yeah, what I'm saying is, they don't even realize that by releasing such blatantly shitty content, they're just killing the channel's safety margin that Boom built. People are starting to stop caring about what comes out. Viewers are getting used to trash and are less and less willing to click on new videos. Because of that, views are dropping even more. And on the call, when I asked why the views were falling, they gave some childish excuse like something with YouTube algorithms, a new update so the videos didn't hit recommendations. They don't even realize that views dropped because of bad retention and viewers losing interest in clicking. They have zero understanding of YouTube and how it actually works. Without exaggeration, you could make an entire documentary film about this whole story. Everywhere you look, there are problems and consequences of their unprofessionalism. I could talk for 10 hours straight about what else is wrong with this company. While I was making this video, they already managed to release some more crap, and there's a ton of problems there too. I don't even see the point in repeating myself. But what made me laugh the most was that they released a trailer for the series after they had already shown the first episode of this same series. In what universe do you have to live to pull off such surrealism? Right now, the Skibidi Toilet series is going through its most difficult period, and its outcome will decide the future not only of Boom himself, but of all YouTubers who create content in this universe. This is already leading to a massive outflow of viewers, and unfortunately, the process has already begun. Because this company owns not only the creator's channel, but all the rights to the characters, they can delete any content or control any creator who makes something in this universe. People like me, my friends, colleagues, and many other creators. In our fandom, there are dozens of talented people making Skibidi toilet animations, edits, breakdowns, and more. Since the list of YouTubers planning to leave if this continues is constantly growing, and I don't want to rewrite the script every time, screenshots of creators who are unhappy with Invisible Narrative's actions will appear on screen during my monologue. The reason for this unprecedented backlash from fans is far from just bad quality of the new content. The problem is that they want to erase Boom. They want to push out the person thanks to whom they even have money and the ability to exist. Without Alexei, their company is absolute nothing. And Alexei proved that with his brilliant move of pretending nothing is happening and handing them control of the channel so viewers could see who they are without him. And even the nickname Dafuk Boom belongs to them. Alexei will literally have to change his name if he decides to start from scratch. And I'm sure that if we lose, everyone will follow Alexei. In the end, we'll win the war even if we lose the battle. We have something they don't: genuine love for the creation. And now we've reached the main question of this video. Who is to blame for all of this? After everything's said, it's obvious that the ones at fault are Invisible Narratives and everyone there who makes decisions. Yes, you can fairly say that Boom is also guilty because he sold them the rights. But considering how many times he proved that quality is his top priority, if he had known this company would turn out to be so talentless and so empty, with nothing behind their words, he would never have agreed to it. Even if we assume the theory that his goal was simply to make money and retire, he would have handed the franchise to decent people, not to them, if he'd known they were hollow. Yes, he made a mistake in 2023 by signing that contract, but given how sincerely he spoke about Michael Bay's films, it's clear he genuinely wanted his franchise to be taken to a new level, the one Adam Goodman promised. Instead, he got the complete opposite. And since legally he can't do anything and can't say anything directly, there's only one option left: to fix everything with the power of true fans. By the way, I want to note that there are good people in this company too. Overall, when you talk to them personally, you don't get the feeling they're some cartoon villains in suits, and that's why I even feel sorry for them. They're just hostages of bad leadership. The whole problem is that the company has absolutely no idea how to work with YouTube or how to talk to an audience. They don't understand even the basics. And even from a business standpoint, their strategy is terrible. They've surrounded themselves only with those who speak positively about their work. And almost any criticism is unwelcome there. That's why nothing changes, even when we're screaming at full volume. They live in their own sterile vacuum. Please, go back to doing what you were once actually good at. Adam Goodman, I'm asking you, leave Skibidi Toilet alone. I made this video not to insult anyone or send an angry mob after them, but to bring the truth to a wider audience. If they hadn't touched the project, we wouldn't care who sells the toys. All viewers want is basic human respect for the franchise and for the creators working within it. No matter how angry I get, I genuinely feel sorry for them. I'm not a confrontational person. I always try to help fix not just the mistake, but its cause. And the root of this problem turned out to be deeper than we'd like. The best and fastest solution to this problem, as I see it, is to return the rights to Mr. Boom. But we don't live in a fairy tale, so an option where the rights are sold to a new company that actually knows what it's doing is also perfectly fine. If that doesn't happen, then it's obvious there will be a blackout from the fandom. Many of the good YouTubers will gradually move to other fandoms, and as a company, you'll be left with nothing. It's only a matter of time. And the scenario where Invisible Narratives suddenly realize everything and fix it is, unfortunately, very unlikely. If they really wanted to, they would have already taken at least one step forward. But there's no action, only pretty words. Just like in their series Emergence, in reality they only talk and never show anything in practice. And the golden rule is, show, don't tell. That's why it's especially ironic that Boom's silence has drowned out the company's shouting. That is the true power of storytelling. To wrap up, I want to dispel the pessimism around what the fandom is doing right now. At first glance, it might seem like all our actions are pointless, since the rights to ST and Boom's channel legally belong to Invisible. But I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. The more we expose who they really are, the more they panic. Why? Because they're afraid of us. Because without us, their business is worthless. How are they going to make money off a fandom from which most YouTubers will soon leave, taking the audience with them? Boom's brilliant gambit has backfired on them. Views are collapsing faster than you can blink. Now it's our turn to act. So every repost of videos like mine, every tweet, every new video on this topic helps push this story into the global spotlight. Iron Cameraman is out.
Run me on swords, coward. You wanted my big rogue sword. You can have it. This is my